A few months ago, I was in Africa. I was volunteering as a midwife on the border of northern Uganda and southern Sudan. Alongside me was Leah, a midwife from Germany. It was market day, and we were going shopping. We promised a very pregnant woman named Lillian that we would buy her some things she needed for her baby and some underwear for herself, because she couldn't go home. Lillian came to our birth center after her husband beat her so badly she had fractured ribs and permanently lost hearing and sight on her left side. When Lillian went to the hospital to seek care, they told her they couldn't treat her unless she went to the police to issue a statement. But when she went to the police, they told her they couldn't give her a statement unless she paid $20, which of course Lillian didn't have. On our way to the market, Leah and I stopped at the police station. We had 3 cases of gender-based violence to follow up on. There was a 20-year-old gang rape victim, an 8-year-old girl who had been raped by a family member, and Lillian. The police told us they hadn't been able or didn't really get to even try to look for any of the men who were involved in the gang rape. They had made no progress arresting Lillian's husband, and that very afternoon they were about to release the man who hurt the little girl, a man who told her he would kill her if she ever told anyone. As we stepped out of the police station, Leah must have seen my eyes, because she said, "What do you need?" And I said, "A place to cry." So we made our way through the market crowds and found a private alley where only 100 African children stared at the weeping white ladies. I told Leah I wasn't crying just about the way things were in Uganda, but because I feel that this is how it's like all over the world. And she said, "I know, it's like this in Germany too." She told me about the time she was being stalked, and the police told her over and over again they couldn't do anything until something actually happened to her. And I told her about my experience in the hospital in Israel when I needed care after my own rape. Gender-based violence and rape culture affect all of us, no matter where we live. Now, when I say rape culture, I'm not just using a provocative, radical feminist term, though there's nothing wrong with being provocative, radical, or feminist. I'm simply using the best words I have to describe the culture that I grew up in, a culture that not only allowed me to be raped, but wouldn't give me the conditions I needed to heal. It was these lack of conditions to heal that nearly cost me my life, and it claimed the lives of many of my friends. When I was 12, I was way too young to be thinking of concepts like rape culture. I hadn't even thought about kissing a boy yet, but that did not protect me from being raped. It was a humid and hot day of late July. That afternoon, I was happy. It was that pure embodied joy of splashing and swimming and laughing with friends in a cool body of water. As darkness fell, I stepped out of the Sea of Galilee and into the dressing room on the beach. A group of grown men were waiting for me there. Actually, they were not waiting specifically for me, but for any female child, because just like terrorism, rape is not personal. I became part of a statistic that affects boys, girls, women, and men. My wise human soul knew how to go on living. I was always busy with school and friends and art and activism. I never forgot what happened, but it remained closed behind a door that I stared at for hours but never opened, until the wisdom in me knew I was ready. 7 years ago, I met a handsome carpenter. We started dating, and the intimacy between us was the trigger. The trigger was important, but just as important was the timing. I was ready to face the pain, and I was ready to enjoy all the gifts of life that were hidden behind that closed door. I started experiencing very intense symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Every smell and sensation brought up a trigger and a flashback, and I had these episodes in the night or day of dissociation that were often accompanied with a strong urge for self-harm. What I needed was a safe place where I could touch and feel my pain, but not die from it. I needed a place that would understand what I was going through and welcome my process as a healthy reaction to an atrocity that I had faced. But the only place society had to offer me was a psychiatric hospital, and as bad as things were, my crisis was about to get much worse. In ancient Hebrew, the word for crisis also means childbirth. In English, emergence is right there in the midst of every emergency, but our modern society seems to have forgotten this innate connection. We don't know how to hold space for crisis or for birth. We don't know how to have the time to wait for natural processes to unfold. We see a rosebud and we just want to open it up. We fear and try to control processes and moments that just need to be witnessed with faith and patience. The amazing thing was that in the midst of that pain, I would experience these waves of overwhelming fear, and then when I had the right conditions around me, I was able to breathe through the pain, just like childbirth contractions. It was like those expansive moments in birth where you feel like you're dying, and that's only because you really are dying, because a new you is being born, a you that can do the impossible. But in the hospital, everything seemed to be set up to make my symptoms go away. I had a nurse tell me that if I cried, they would have to put me in the closed, secure unit. I had a doctor tell me he had no choice but to physically restrain me only because my body was doing what I needed to do to get the violence out. I met incredible women there, women who had so much talent and brilliance and bravery, and they had lived through rape and incest and child prostitution. We were all told in so many different ways not to talk about our trauma, not to remember, and not to believe our own memories. At first, I attributed these interactions to anecdotal human failings. Maybe the nurse had a bad fight with her boyfriend. Perhaps the intern doctor didn't get enough sleep. But after working with the Israeli Ministry of Health to gather testimonies from thousands of women, I now know that these silencing practices are a norm. Most doctors, nurses, and police officers are incredibly good people. They go out of their way every single day to save lives. But there are aspects of our institutions in our culture that are still part of the problem and not part of the solution. I know that healing is something that takes place by itself when we have the right conditions. And these right conditions aren't expensive or complicated. If you've ever given birth or tried to do something incredibly difficult, then you know how much it means to have people around you who are not afraid of your fear, who know that you know your way through the darkness, to the underworld, and back. And if you know this, you know what a woman or a man need when they are recovering from rape. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "We will remember not the words of our enemies by the silence of our friends. See, it's one thing to feel like there's a few bad people in the world, but it's an entirely different feeling to sense that all the good people let you down. And it was this feeling that I had in the hospital that finally led me to despair, and I tried to take my own life. I'm not sure why I didn't succeed, but many of my friends did. Over the last 3 years, I lost 7 of my closest friends to suicide. Each and every one of them had lived through sexual violence and hospitalization, and they each said in the letters they left behind that it wasn't the trauma that took their life. It was the way that society wouldn't make room for their pain. It was this feeling that there's just no place for us in this culture and for the things that culture has forced us to live with. It was during my friend May's funeral that I vowed to do everything in my power to realize a vision and a dream that we shared. A land where women heal. Land where women heal is a place where women come and receive evidence-based, trauma-informed, professional care from psychiatrists and psychologists. It's not a building, but a village. Embraced by community and connection to nature are integral parts of the healing. Now, in order to offer free care for survivors, the village includes a social business. This allows the project to be self-sustainable. All income-generating activities are connected to healing rape culture, empowering girls, teaching safe sex education, healing womanhood, menarche, menopause, birth. I know that there is an innate connection between honoring and celebrating these cycles of a woman's life to healing everything, the bigger picture. Then this model is a pilot. It's meant to spread and be copied. My wish is for there to be some sort of a land where women heal in every state and country around the world. And then, of course, of the men and the boys who need so much healing too. I know that through truth and reconciliation, we will be able to trust again. Trust the institutions of our culture and trust one another. But there has to first be room for the pain. There has to be room for the atrocity that so many of us have been living with for so long. A crisis is a birth. It happens when we are ready. I actually believe that remembering this is key not only for PTSD and sexual abuse, but for the whole field of mental health that needs healing too. A crisis is a birth that happens when we are ready, and we as a society are ready. That's why all this pain is coming up. That's why we are finally able to say, me too. The goal of all of this is not shaming or blaming. The goal is healing. I welcome every person who is able to say, ow, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that to you. What has happened to me? What has happened to us that we are doing this to each other? What's going on? All I ever wanted for the men who raped me was for them to be able to awaken from the nightmare they must be living in, to do what they did to a little girl. Imagine the disconnection from their own hearts. I want to invite us not to be afraid of this pain that's coming up. We are getting our soul back. We are birthing the culture that our grandchildren will live in. Can you imagine a world where it is safe to be a child, a man and a woman? Safety is not just about preventing things from happening. We bring children into this world and we don't really have control over what life will put them through. Safety is about being willing to meet the emotions that life brings. So, can you imagine a world where it is safe? And what does it feel like? What does it feel like to walk around safe in this world? What is your vision for the culture that comes after rape culture? What is your vision for a world without rape? What does it take to get there? And if it takes a while to get there, can we at least, meanwhile, do everything we can to make sure that survivors have everything they need to be supported, to heal, and to choose life? Thank you.